So, few comic book characters are as popular as Wolverine. Since debuting in The Incredible Hulk number 140 in 1974, this Canadian ball of rage has gone on to become a staple of not just comics, but also of mainstream pop culture. He's actually famed for having so many horrendous things happen to him. After all, this is somebody whose healing factor makes him near invincible and unkillable, and thus there has to be some pretty messed up stuff to happen to him in order for readers to feel like Logan is genuinely in jeopardy. So let's take a look at some of the absolute worst. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 Wolverine fates worse than death. Number 10. Never being able to celebrate his birthday. Even if you're one of those low-key sorts who would rather not celebrate your birthday each year, you at least have the option to go all out and celebrate if you so wish. For Wolverine, though, that's something that he can only dream of. In the case of Logan, birthdays are not about cake, candles, and copious amounts of booze. No, his birthdays are marked every year by an intense battle with his longtime foe, Sabretooth. This tradition began at the turn of the 20th century. With Wolverine and Sabretooth having crossed paths previously, the future X-Men member had settled down in the Canadian mountains for a life of love and harmony with his beau, Silver Fox. Sent into town on his birthday so that Silver Fox could prepare a quiet party for our hero, he returned to find the corpse of his beloved, complete with "Happy Birthday" written on the wall in her blood. Of course, Sabretooth was the person behind this, and he'd first tried to force himself onto Silver Fox before ultimately deciding to murder her. From that moment on, the villainous Victor Creed returns to pay Wolverine a visit on his birthday every year. Sometimes this visit is just for a jovial fight, other times there's a much more sinister intent, and there have even been times where Sabretooth again puts Wolvie's loved ones in his crosshairs. Number 9. Having the adamantium pulled from his body. More often than not, Magneto is somebody who does not about. Back in 1993's Fatal Attraction story, Wolverine found this out in an extremely painful way. Still standing to this day as one of the most iconic X-Men images ever, this tale served up the twisted, terrifying image of Logan having the adamantium skeleton being pulled from within him. It was grim, it was garish, and the artwork is utterly jaw-dropping. In this 93 story, the UN Secretary Council initiate a network of satellites around the globe in order to put a halt to Magneto's powers of magnetism. Of course, the villainous sort doesn't take too kindly to this, and thus he retaliates by shutting down all of Earth's electronics, which then has Magneto butting heads with his old pal Charles Xavier. Now, things start off rather cordial between Magneto and the X-Men here, with the Master of Magnetism remaining cool, calm, and collected. Well, that is until Wolverine loses his cool and takes a swing. Then, in the blink of an eye, the enraged Magneto tears the adamantium out of his body, as in the one that's the same metal that is literally forged to his skeleton. So brutal was this attack, the only reason that our Knucklehead was able to survive was thanks to Jean Grey using her immense powers to hold his skeleton in place. Number 8. Being eaten alive. While having a healing factor that makes you hard to kill is definitely one thing, that healing factor doesn't mean that somebody can't subdue you and then eat your very flesh. It sounds disturbing as all hell, but that was indeed what happened to Wolverine in the 2001 story Hunted. This all comes about after Logan and Beast wind up trapped in a prison specifically designed for and full of supervillains. Now, if that itself wasn't bad enough, things take a bizarre turn for the worst when Wolverine's cellmate ends up being a resurrected 18th century sorcerer known as Morbius. Translated from French, that name literally means bad. Making his debut here, Morbius is not just a sorcerer, but he's also a cannibal. Upon taking a few choice bites out of the tied-up Wolverine, the rogue's powers start to increase and fix up all of the other villains' aches, pains, and deceased natures, with the flesh of Logan being full of the healing factor protein that makes for a particularly tasty dish for Morbius. Number 7. The possibility of outliving everyone. Sure, Wolverine has been killed off at times within the pages of Marvel Comics, but said demises never quite stick, and the old Knucklehead is usually back alive and cracking skulls sooner rather than later. The reality of Logan's situation is that his healing powers mean that he's probably destined to outlive everyone he knows. Of course, immortality might sound appealing on the surface, but being near enough unkillable means that you will see your nearest and dearest die, you will see the wars and battles that will shape the future of this world, and you will inevitably see the Earth and beyond completely go to the dogs. Throughout all of this, Wolvie will see friends come and go, lovers perish, and family fall apart. For Weapon X, the toll of this must surely be felt, with him knowing that he will eventually lose anyone he dares to get remotely close with. It's a sad, tragic reality, but this longtime member of the X-Men faces the prospect of a lonely and long existence full of regret, loss, and pain. But then again, there is another school of thought, and that is that Wolverine may end up sharing this long existence with the equally unkillable Deadpool, which for Logan probably could be a fate worse than being stuck on his own. Number 6. Losing his body. body. The Ultimate line of Marvel Comics is one that will forever split opinion. To say that this is a very different world to the main 616 Marvel universe would be an understatement, with this line of titles never being afraid to make some bold and stark choices. And one of the many jarring visuals of the countless Ultimate books was the sight of a decapitated Wolverine in 2009's Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk tale. Here Logan had been tasked by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Nick Fury with finding and killing the Jade Giant. This all comes about after the Hulk has caused plenty of public destruction and death, and Fury feels that the only option he has left is to use lethal force to stop the Green Goliath. When he finds Hulk, things do not go too well for the old knucklehead. After angering the big guy, Wolverine ends up being torn in two, with the Hulk about to eat one of Logan's legs before She-Hulk intervenes. Skipping ahead in the timeline, we then see the decapitated head of the rescued Wolverine being held in a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility. But because Wolverine is Wolverine, decapitation doesn't actually kill him, and we get to see his severed head engaging in a conversation with Fury. But that conversation doesn't go too well because the S.H.I.E.L.D. man shoots Wolverine in the face. When the Berserker next wakes up, he's back in his full-bodied form. Yeah, that's the Ultimate books for you. They are absolutely insane. Number 5. Eradicating the X-Men. While often the grump of the group, not to mention his affinity to teams like the Avengers and X-Force, there's no doubting that Wolverine views the X-Men as family, and much like real families, you don't have to get on with everyone all the time, but there is an unbreakable bond that ties you together. In Old Man Logan, the action picks up with, well, Logan as an old man. With the United States decimated and split up into 4 crime lord-led territories, Wolverine has retired the claws and started a family with his wife Maureen, with whom he has 2 children, Scotty and Jade. The present-day narrative of this tale finds Wolverine traveling across country with a blind Hawkeye, as this big bad of the future world is an erratic, deranged Hulk and his incestuous Hulk gang. But even though that is absolutely disgusting, it is only in the fleeting looks at the past where you find the true horror of this story. In a flashback sequence, readers see how Wolverine killed 40 supervillains as they launched an assault on the X-Mansion and the young mutants who resided there. In a true moment of tragedy, though, it's revealed that this was merely a scheme from Mysterio, and the people that Wolverine killed were his fellow X-Men. Such grief did Logan feel that he tried to kill himself by getting hit by a train. Of course, that didn't kill him, but that was the moment where the classic Wolverine persona was left behind. Number 4. The death of his pregnant wife. Seriously, nobody in the history of comics has lost as many lovers, girlfriends, or wives as Wolverine. To say that Logan is unlucky in love would be an understatement, with the Grim Reaper pretty much calling for anyone that Wolverine has dared to get romantically entwined with. And on that front, the character's relationship with Itsu Akiro was one of many to end in death. These 2 lovebirds became involved shortly after Wolverine's time serving in World War II. Far from merely a fling or a bit of fun, Wolverine and Itsu became married and were then expecting their first child, well until our hero returned home to find his pregnant wife brutally murdered. Not only had Wolverine lost his bride, but he'd also lost his unborn child. Years later, the origins and ending story would reveal that the person responsible for this carnage was actually the Winter Soldier. It would be explained how Bucky Barnes killed Itsu in order to draw Logan out of his self-imposed hiding. In a further twist, Wolverine and Itsu's child was actually saved and later adopted. That child would grow up to become the nefarious Daken. Number 3. Having to drown his own son. And speaking of Daken, the offspring of Wolverine would prove to be one of the greatest rivals of his old man's. With major tensions laced throughout the father-son relationship, there were times when Logan tried to play nice with his son, there were times where they tried to play rough with his son, and there were even times where Daken even took up his dad's moniker of Wolverine. The final straw for Logan, though, came in November 2013's Uncanny X-Force number 34. There, it was revealed that Daken was actually the mastermind behind a brand new incarnation of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. With a more sinister edge to him than ever before, Daken promises Wolverine that he will kill each and every student that Wolverine takes into his new school for young mutants. Realizing that there is no other way to stop his son, the intense battle here results in Wolverine drowning him. Making this all the more poignant, this fight is intersped with images of Daken dreaming what life could have been if he was raised by Logan and Itsu. Likewise, after killing Daken, the issue ends with Wolverine similarly pondering what family life could have looked like if his wife was never murdered. Number 2. Unknowingly killing 5 of his children. Okay, so having to kill 1 child was obviously pretty rough for Wolverine, but at least he knew Daken had been tormented by him for years. As 2010 rolled into 2011, Logan found himself butting heads with a mysterious organization known as the Red Right Hand. Created by a man simply known as the Founder, this group consisted of beings who had their personal reasons for despising Wolverine. In fact, one of the Right Red Hand's members at the time was Daken, with him happy to help pile on the misery for his pops. The tussles between Wolverine and this villainous group came to a head with Logan battling a team of rogues dubbed the Mongrels. When Weapon X's pleas for peace with the Mongrels wasn't responded to in kind, he killed 5 of them. Taking great pleasure in doing so, the founder then informed Wolverine that the 5 people he had just killed were 5 of his children that he'd never known existed. The Red Right Hand had tracked these children down and set about getting some twisted form of revenge on Logan for the wrongs he'd supposedly done to them years prior, and with that, the Red Right Hand were banished to hell, never to be seen again. And number 1, infected with every possible terminal disease. When a disease is labelled terminal, it obviously means that it's quite deadly, and death has rarely been applicable when it comes to Wolverine, of course, so there's no simple terminal illness that is able to knock him off. In the Apocalypse Solution story from Uncanny X-Force back in 2011, the centre of the tale focuses on Apocalypse and his infamous 4 Horsemen. Here, Apocalypse is a child, with his latest iteration of the Horsemen taking down Wolverine and his X-Force buddies. All that the Horsemen await is the call from Apocalypse to kill these heroes. For Logan, the events here are definitely worse than death, because he's infected by every single terminal illness known to mankind. This occurs during his battle with the latest version of death, and the rogue fires all of that sickness, all of that pain, all of the organ-devouring energy directly into Wolverine. Thankfully, Phantom X would save Wolverine before his body could fully shut down, using his unique abilities of misdirection to confuse death. Unfortunately, this then leaves Wolverine and his X-Force teammates with the chilling question of whether or not to execute a young Apocalypse for who they know will grow up to be such a sinister force to be reckoned with. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 Wolverine fates worse than death. I hope that you enjoyed this. That's the wrong word, isn't it? I hope you got something from this at least. And let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram at RetroJ, but the O is a 0. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.